Listeners are here and filtering in, and as our speakers are here tonight, let's go ahead and begin with a prayer. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Holy Spirit, inspire me. Love of God, consume me. Along the true path, lead me. Mary, my mother, look upon me. With Jesus, bless me. From all evil, from all illusion, from all danger, preserve me. Espíritu Santo, inspírame. Amor de Dios, consúmeme. Al verdadero camino, condúceme. María, Madre mía, mírame. Con Jesús, bendíceme. De todo mal, de toda ilusión, de todo peligro, presérvame. Amen. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us. That's a prayer in English and Spanish from Saint Mary of Jesus Crucified, Santa Maria de Jesús Crucificado, a French, well, actually, she's from Palestine. And she was in France several years as a Discalced Carmelite nun, where she entered the order, and then went to India to help found a Carmelite monastery there, and then was the principal foundress of the Discalced Carmelite Monastery in Bethlehem and in Nazareth. Her story is amazing because she was slain and left for dead with her throat slit in Alexandria, Egypt. And the Virgin Mary personally saw that she was healed, raised to life, and nursed her along until she was ready to emerge from the place where her assassin dumped her. It's an amazing story. So Jan is our co-host tonight, and we're grateful for her presence. We're thankful to Lo Queen for the simulcast tonight, to Roger for your simulcast as well. And always our volunteers help us in preparation of the questions, in preparation for every space. And we're grateful to all of you, to La Peque, Pinolero, and Coiquel. Thanks again. Our guest tonight is Roger Alfredo Martinez, and I know in Nicaragua you don't say Roger, you say Roger. But we're going to say Roger tonight. This is principally an English-speaking space, and I'm sure that he's familiar with that. Certainly, he's well known among the Nicaraguan opposition as the Nica psychologist, El Psicólogo Nica, and he's a native of beautiful Granada, Nicaragua. That's a historic city that was settled around the time that St. Teresa of Avila was born, my hero, my mother. Roger isn't that old, of course, but he was an established mental health professional and published author when protests against the dictatorship began in April 2018 and then were met with violent repression. And that, as you've heard, if you've been with us Sunday after Sunday, you know that April 2018 is the watershed moment. And from that point forward, the violent repression began and continued. You know, lessons from his books, there are two books that were published when he became a political prisoner. Um, those books caused him to be well known. And one book, It's Okay to Be Wrong, Real Positivity That Will Help You Flourish in the Midst of Adversity. Roger, that's my translation of the title. And Ordinary People, Extraordinary Minds. Don't change your story, change the way you see it. Eventually, those two titles and the points of help that they provided became self-help guides for him, because by early July 2018, when the violence had claimed the lives of many protesters, the prison system in Nicaragua was filling up with political prisoners, and Bishop Silvio Jose Baez, the auxiliary bishop of Managua, was physically attacked and wounded in a basilica at the beginning of 2018 in July. People were still protesting, but because of the socio-political situation and the Ortega regime's firing of hospital staff, shutting down hospitals, they began to turn away wounded protesters because they were threatened if they treated any of the protesters. So hospitals and health centers were simply not accepting anyone for treatment. So during that time, Roger volunteered to help care for wounded in Granada at a makeshift medical aid station. If you've ever watched MASH reruns, you know what an aid station looks like. It was a little bit more glorious than that, but not much. And that aid station was located near Granada's historic 16th century parish of Our Lady of the Assumption in Salteva. You see photos. If you go to TripAdvisor and say Nicaragua, they're going to show you a photo of that church because it's very old, very famous. And as he can explain, on July 15, he was at the aid station by the church when civilians wearing balaclavas and other means to conceal their identity, uh, caps over their faces. They violently attacked the medical volunteers there, and he was kidnapped. He was detained. And then later in September of that year, 2018, Roger was transferred to the same prison where we believe Bishop Rolando Alvarez is held today. That's La Modelo. So tonight, Roger is going to help us understand the experience of political prisoners and prisoners of conscience like Bishop Alvarez. So this knowledge that we gain tonight can help us to become better advocates for the bishop in jail and for all those who are experiencing brutal persecution like Roger did. So I know that's a lengthy introduction, but he has a heck of a story. Roger, go ahead and unmute yourself. We're going to talk here in a moment. You know, Roger is bilingual and he's going to be translating or interpreting for our listeners. So if you have a question or comment, as always, feel free to speak in the language you prefer. We always appreciate everybody's patience in these bilingual spaces. So once again, we say thanks. And if you want to speak tonight, just tap the microphone symbol. We always try to be respectful of our time, limit our conversations, and tonight we're going to shoot for a maximum of 90 minutes, an hour and a half. And Roger, now you get to hear once again my terrible Spanish. Como Roger es bilingüe, traducirá o interpretará para nuestros oyentes de habla español. Si tiene alguna pregunta o comentario, no dude en hablar en el idioma que prefiera. Siempre, siempre agradecemos la paciencia de todos en nuestros espacios bilingües. Así que muchas gracias. Y si desea intervenir, pulse el símbolo del micrófono y siempre intentamos, como siempre, ser respetuosos con el tiempo y limitamos las conversaciones y preguntas a 1 hora y media. Muchas gracias. Okay, Roger, you're on. Let's talk about your story. We want to say thanks again for joining us tonight. I know that your story cannot be told in just 1 hour or 90 minutes, but we want to invite you to help us understand not only your experience, but also to understand what Bishop Alvarez and others are going through as political prisoners or former political prisoners, now exiled. So if you would, rather than tell us your entire life story, let's focus on 2018 and describe
practice, but this situation in Nicaragua in 2019, well, it's now part of my story. So I'm happy that you are interested on spreading what we're going through in Nicaragua, and I'm more than happy to be here, share what happened, and and also to try to understand what Bishop um, from Matagalpa is going through, Bishop Alvarez. And I'm here. I'm all ears. If you have all the questions you have, you can go ahead and ask whatever you want. Okay. So I'm here to share.
Sorry, I got cut off there for a moment. Roger, please go ahead and talk about um, April to July 2018 and what you experienced, what led up to your kidnapping, if you will, in July.
Okay. Well, in April to 2019, I mean 2018, um, there was some uh, uh, fire or forest. There was a fire in the forest in Nicaragua. So young people, most of them student, university student, they stood up against that, and that was actually what that happened a week before April 18th and April 19th when they started killing people. And it was in regards this social security raised in rights that they wanted that the Sandinista regime wanted to cut off from elderly people. So on April 2018, on April 18th, 2018, we all received messages on WhatsApp and all the social media to go to the streets, peacefully go to the street and stand up for our rights. And the next day, on that was pretty much all around Nicaragua, in all major cities. There were people protesting, peaceful protesting. In on the 19th, they started killing people because we were a lot of people on the streets fighting for our rights, for all elderly people, for our grandparents' rights. In in I mean, it didn't happen. I mean, it was only a week when they were like 69 students killed on the streets. So basically, they didn't want us on the street. Uh, um, and it's hard for me to remember all those times. It is difficult. I'm doing my best, to be honest with you, but seeing all these students, young people, killed by snipers with bullets on their heads, in their necks, in their chest, that was something that we never expected. The government, the regime, was killing people on the streets in in Granada, where I'm from. There were a lot of manifestations, protests, and these civilians, the supporters, the regime supporters, they they were throwing rocks at the beginning. Then they were throwing homemade bombs to the crowd, to the protesters, to the in you mentioned that the order from the regime was to not to assist any protester in public hospitals. So I was just sitting in a corner with a person at a quick dance, and we were like, what can we do in this case? I mean, How can I help? That was the question that I made to myself. How can I help in this situation? I'm not gonna be throwing rocks. I'm not gonna. I don't have guns. I don't have. But how can I help? That was my question, and that was the question that we all in that corner we started making. So this person, the owner of that corner, he opened his house, and since I was I'm a psychologist. I was working with the Red Cross, so they trained me on first aid. So we started providing first aid to the injured people and to the protesters. And I sent you picture of a lot of injured people. We assisted people with bullets in their heads, with bullets in their chest, rocks. They were putting glass and rocks in the homemade bombs. So when they exploded close to the protesters, they were spreading rocks in glass, getting into the people's skins, in their backs, through their clothing. So I mean, they were so bad. I mean, they did it. Um, I don't know what word can I. They were evil. That's the word. They were evil against against the people on the streets, and that's what basically I did. And since I was already publishing in one of the major newspapers in Nicaragua, and I had access to some television channels, I sent all that information to them, photos, reports with names, pointing out people responsible for that situation in Granada. And what I'm telling you, that happened on every single major city. What my story, it's the same story of many people in several cities in Nicaragua. Many uh, uh, first aid uh, places like we were like we had, you know. Um so that's basically what they saw, that I was doing, that I was letting the people know who was responsible for those injuries, for those people shot in their heads, in their chest. Basically they put me on a list. That's what they do, they put you on a list. So they start threatening you on your social media profiles, sending, "We're gonna kill you. You better shut up." Um, and I didn't, and I didn't. So on July the 15th, they broke into the first aid place clinic, and they tortured me. They took me out. They they were using their rifles to beat me. Um, they hit me on the head. They hit me on the chest, even on my stomach. There was one guy that hold his rifle and hit me on my stomach. And this might be so graphical, but they by that hit, my sphincters, they couldn't hold what I had inside. So my pants, my underwear got dirty, and I'm sure you know what I mean with that. So they didn't have no mercy. They pulled my hairs. All the hairs from my legs were gone. I didn't have them. They were they were using their cigarettes and put it in my body. They were shooting that day, so the tip of their rifles were heat. They were hot, so they were putting that in my ribs. I still have signs of that torture in my body. And after a couple hours, and they were just, and they were civilians. So the regime supporters in Granada, in Masaya, and other places, they gather in Granada that morning. So they were the ones that tortured me. People they knew me. So they were civilians. They were covering their faces. Some of them I could recognize them by their voice, and I know who they are. And after a couple hours torturing me, they went to the police station, and they just dropped me off at the police station. They put me in a cell with some other people, but I couldn't stand up. The next 2 days, I couldn't stand up. It was impossible for me to stand up. I couldn't. My legs were beaten so hard that I couldn't hold my own weight. So after 2 days there, they grabbed me, they put me on my feet, and they took me to a court. So they said that I was making bombs, rifles, and all kind of weapons against the government. So that was the crime that I committed. In So I was then they put me on a cell. It was like 2 meters square. So you will be able to put one of your hands on one of the side of the cell, and with the other hand you were able to touch the other wall of the cell. It was that small, and we were like 8 people there. At some point, we were 8 people there. Most of them protesters. In After 2 months, isolated, I didn't have any news from outside. I didn't know what was going on with my children, which by that time my oldest daughter, she was 6 years old, and my younger son, he was 3 years old. So they were threatening me about killing my children. The police, and this was the police now. They started saying, "Tell me where do you have the weapons? Who is financing you? Who's supporting you? Who's giving you the money? Is the American here? Are they giving you dollars?" In And if you don't speak, if you don't say, we're gonna kill your children. And they showed me picture of my children, my daughter, coming out from school. Can you imagine that pain of of seeing your children, a picture of your children, of your daughter, who was only 6 years old, um, from school? They had access to my children. They could have harmed my children because they wanted me to say things that they were not true. We didn't have any weapon. We didn't have any guns. We were just only fighting on the streets for our rights in all around Nicaragua. So after 2 months, they sent me to La Modelo, which is the main jail in Nicaragua, in Managua, actually. In And it was some kind of relief because this was a big facility. It was built for maybe 220 people to fit in there. So it was kind of spacey. So can you imagine going from a cell that it was 2 meters square to another cell that it was this big? It was built for 220 people. I was able to walk. I was able to run in the corridors between the beds. It was some kind of freedom. I was able to feel some kind of freedom on that cell. I was still in jail, But after 2 months, when I wasn't able to see the sun, when I wasn't able to walk or to do some kind of exercise or even walk, because after 3 steps, you were able to touch the entrance or these bars from the cells in the bottom of the cell. In And it was hard, even though I was with like 60 other Nicaraguan political prisoners in that big cell, from all around Nicaragua, people from the north, people from the south, people from the Atlantic coast, all around Nicaragua. They put us all in that place. They brought us from all around Nicaragua to that prison just to keep us there, because they were saying that we were the leaders, and there was no leaders. There was no leader there. It was something. I mean, we were just fighting. We were just raising our voices for our rights. In So if you ask me for the conditions in that prison, the water is so heavy. There are a lot of minerals that when you drink that water, you can feel your lips like it's like an oil lipstick. You can press your lips, and then when you want to open it, it's hard for you to open your lips because of the heaviness of that water. So it's harmful for a human to drink that water, and they didn't give us the opportunity to purchase water outside, not letting our families to bring us water into the prison. So we had to drink that water. some of my some of the people that were with me, they are now suffering with kidney diseases. They're ill in their kidneys, in their kidneys, due to that water. I try to not to drink that water, but at some point I had to. I try to not to drink that. I mean, not to eat that food, because on the food we found pieces of metal. We found cockroaches on in the food. Um, even worms in the food, and we had to eat it. We had to eat it. We had just to take the piece of metal out, put it aside, and just eat that food, because there was no option. During those first months in the jail, in that prison, it was like that. We couldn't see our families that often. They didn't allow us visits. In the regular regime within that prison, a a regular inmate, they have the right to receive visits every week. When they are punished, they put them in that regime where they can see their families every 21 days. They put us in that regime, so we were able to start seeing our families every 21 days. We were punished. Just getting there, and we were punished. So it was around November. It was around this time. I was transferred to that prison in September. So it was around November that they started allowing um, uh, our families to put money on a card, because they have some kind of store inside the prison, so you can write your order. So I was able to purchase this big jar of water. And so they started being more flexible with us. The food was some kind of improvement with the food. But you know why? Because the Red Cross was visiting us, because the some other the European congressmen, they were visiting us. Even um, 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 how can you help me with this word? The ambassador of the Vatican in Managua. I
Yes,
don't know the word.
the Apostolic Nuncio, Sommertag.
The nuncio, yeah, the nuncio came to the prison and visited us. So they started giving us better quality food just because of that. It's not because they wanted to. They wanted us to suffer. They wanted to break our souls. They we were sleeping at midnight and they were using this big uh cane, and since the gates are made of metal, they started hitting the gate just because. And we were like, we couldn't sleep. We couldn't have 6 hours, 5 hours of sleep in a row because they did that in December on Christmas Eve. We sang the national anthem at midnight. We started greeting each other. We started crying, and like 12, uh, 12:05, 12:10, we started singing the national anthem. You know what happened? Like 300 guards with dogs. They came and started beating us, and they were holding their dogs, and they all they, there was another guard telling the one who was holding the dogs, uh, uh, let the dog eat that piece of, you know that word. I don't want to say it, but they were telling the other with the dogs to let them eat us, to let them kill us. Can you imagine having a dog in your ears, barking, and a guard saying, "Let him kill him! Let him kill him!" It was it was it was a tough time, and we used to tell our relatives to bring these plastic bags, blue, white, yellow. So with the plastic, we started cutting the plastic and making flags. We made a three strips flag, blue, white, and blue, which is the Nicaraguan flag, made of plastic. We made the church flag yellow and white, and there was a crime inside there. We have to we have to hide just just pieces of plastic representing our flags and the church flags inside that prison. If they were to find the flags, they will grab the person they might think was responsible for that and put it in a worse regime, which is called the 300, because there are 300 small individual cells where you can. It is also called the little hell because of the heat. The heat is so it almost it's like being on a stove on a um, it was like being on hell. Whatever you can imagine being on hell with that heat, that is the 300 prison, which was next where we were. So we couldn't sing our anthem. We couldn't make our um, flags with plastics. We couldn't do anything. And the same thing happened on December the 31st, because I believe they said, okay, they learned their lesson on Christmas Eve. They're not gonna do it on New Year's uh, 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 on the 31st, on December the 31st. But we did it, and again, there was another journey of kicking us, beating us, hitting us, and the the inmates, they were able to spread the word out of, because they we were like isolated. We didn't have access to any kind of news. There was a separated part of the prison where we when they kept us, and we were able to use the sign language with our hands to speak with the regular inmates on the other side of the wall on the second floor, because we were able to see them only on the second floor because of the height of the wall. So we were able to speak with them um, through sign language using our hands. I learned how to speak with sign language. So we told them, because they do have access to cell phones, so they were able to let the people outside that they were beating us. So they allowed a special visit the next day, because the people outside were worried about our situation, and they saw us. They saw how they with all the injuries that we had on January the 1st. So it was hard. It was really hard, um, because they were still doing investigations inside the prison, taking you out, asking you where are the guns, who is giving you the money, is the CIA involved, and things like that. So in January, the January 2019, the political negotiation were established for the second time. In So they started treating us a little bit better. There was one day that they came with chicken, rice, beans, and I believe it was banana, but it was well cooked, because before that, the rice, it was only boiled. It was not cooked. It was only boiled, and the rice, it was I mean in the beans, with rocks. But this time it was fried with actual oil, kitchen oil. And we were like, why are they doing this? We were like kind of scared of eating that food because it was not normal. And you know why they did that? It was because the Red Cross came to visit while we were eating. So they wanted the Red Cross to see that they were treating us fine after the whole beating in December. That we're eating nice food, and that the chicken and the rice and the beans and everything was well cooked. And they even had pinolillo, which is this is a corn make beverage, um, which was not normal. It was only the food, and you have to drink the water inside the cell. So thankfully, the negotiations went fine, and they started releasing the political prisoners, starting on February the 27th or the 28th, I believe. They let me out on April the 5th, and I couldn't go back to Granada. I tried, but when they knew I was there, they followed me. They even shoot me with a gun, obviously. And I couldn't live in Granada, so I had to stay in Managua for some period of time. Then my lawyer, my attorney, on in September, he told me, you know what, your court file, is now being put aside. So they're not canceling your file; they're just putting it aside. So if you speak, if you do something that they feel that is again against them, they can just remove that, and put you in jail. So I advise you to leave. So I had to leave in Nicaragua on that September for Costa Rica. I've been here for almost 5 years. In I have to bring my daughter here, because when I came here, I started speaking. I started posting. They criminalized um, solidarity. They criminalized they criminalize you if you post in your social media something that they feel is against them. They put you in jail. I mean, I had to leave because I needed to speak. My voice is my weapon, and so that's what I'm doing. And when I came here, I decided to write my experience in a book, which was part of my healing process. In It was hard for me to write the same way it's hard for me to tell you this whole story. I'm holding myself together now, believe me. But I had to do it. It was hard, and I had to take my daughter here because since I started posting in my social media, they did the same. They show me picture of my daughter. They send me picture through my social media. If you don't shut up, guess who's gonna pay for that? So my daughter had to came here, and she's been here. She's been a brave uh, young lady. She's now 10, and she's doing pretty good in school, and she's learning a lot, and she's been so brave. So I'm proud of her. And if you ask me, what was something that held me inside there? Um, my my professional title, psychologist, that became my nickname. In when the people in La Modelo prison, they were hearing someone else calling me psychologist. They came to me, and are you a real? It's psychologist your real title, or it's just a nickname? When I told them, well, it's a nickname, but I'm also a psychologist. And I started speaking with people inside there, people that needed to speak and to vent and to release what they were feeling inside. So I felt some kind of purpose being there, speaking with people. I mean, we sat on their bed and we started speaking. And during the night, I was putting all my blankets around my bed, and I cried inside that blanket. No one was able to see me crying inside, but it was the time for myself. It was my own time inside those blankets. Because during the day, I spend most of the day speaking with my um, with the people that were sharing the same situation with me. So that gave me some sense of purpose. And I was thinking, if I weren't here, who were do who were doing this, what I'm doing. So it was some kind of purpose, and that helped me a lot. It walked me through every single day, speaking with other. Um, so uh, that's basically my experience in that prison. So I don't know if you have questions, and I'm all ears now.
Well, thanks so much. We've got questions that we had already planned, but you've answered so many of them. I'm going to go ahead and let Jan speak. Jan, what kind of follow-up question would you have for Roger at this time?
First of all, Roger, thank you so much for speaking so passionately about your experience. I can tell that it's really raw, and remembering it's really heartfelt. So thank you for sharing it. Um, you've already mentioned this about you were helping the young people that were badly wounded in Grenada in 2018, and the aid station, the clinic. Um, who were the young people? And you've mentioned that their injuries were caused, was it by snipers and different things? So I'm looking to find out, who were the young people? What were they doing? And was it the bombs, the snipers that caused their injuries? And what treatment were you able to provide there in the clinic?
Um, well, when we started the clinic, it was only like 5 people there. Two of them, they were the daughters of the house owner. They were underage, so it was the two of them, the house owner. It was me and another young man. But after like 5 or 7 days, when I was able to spread the word about what was happening in that clinic, some other volunteers came, even people, nurses from the uh, Ministry of Health, that I had to take them at midnight. I have to go to their houses at midnight and return them at midnight the next day. So it was like 24-hour shift, helping people. And it was the police, it was the civilians, the paramilitary forces, which is actually civilians, Sandinistas, um, um, holding rifles, war rifles in guns, short guns. Um, so it was actually during the nights, the worst times for those for that period, because we started taking the cobblestones, the stones from the street, and building walls to try to protect us, to try to stop their cars, their trucks, to come into our neighbors in in um, in shoot us, because that's what they were doing. So um, it was the police. We gang young people from one neighbor in Granada, which is known for these teenagers that they are some gang members. Can you imagine seeing your police force, your local police force, with gang teenagers on their trucks, using the same the shotguns, holding the shotguns and the rifles, that the police was the only force to have access to that type of weapons. It was actually it was actually uh, during the night, where they were uh, going to the neighbors, where we were building these street walls um, with the bricks from the streets. In It was during the night where most of these young people guarding and protecting their homes, their relatives, and their neighborhood, that they were injured. And so we had access to the Red Cross at the beginning. So when we had someone with a bullet in their chest, it was the Red Cross in charge of taking that bullet out. I sent picture of that to Carmelita, and even we were even able to remove the pieces of glasses from their backs, and the pieces of rocks from their backs. And it was hard, and some doctors, they also volunteer, and there was another clinic open in another area of the city. So when we couldn't assist someone with a bullet, I was in charge. My car was some kind of ambulance. So we put it in my car, and I took them to the other side of the city, where the doctors were better prepared for that type of situation. People that were hit in the eyes, in their eyes was bleeding, and I don't know what happened with this young man, but hopefully he didn't lose his eye, because their eyeball was actually outside of the orbit of the eye. So it was that type of injuries, and that type of weapons that they were using. Um, AK, the AK rifle. At some point, they were shooting at the protester in their feet. And remember, it was actually during the night. they most of the time use their guns and rifles during the night. In during the day, it was like it was only throwing rocks in homemade bombs because they didn't want anyone to record what they were doing during the night. So it so yeah, that's what we were doing, and that's how they were doing in Granada. And remember, this is a description that applies in Granada and every major city in Nicaragua. So it was all around Nicaragua at some point.
Roger, would you take a moment just to explain to our Nicaraguan listeners in not only on this platform, but also on Little Queen's channels and your channels, just to let them know what you're explaining. Obviously you don't have to uh, uh, translate everything, but they know the story. Would you just let them know that you're telling the story, please, in Spanish?
Sure, sure. Muchas gracias a quienes están conectados en todas las plataformas de Lo Queen, también en mis plataformas y quienes están acompañándonos aquí en el Space. Eh, ah, Básicamente he explicado mi experiencia como desde abril del 2018 me vi involucrado en las manifestaciones y protestas pacíficas en Granada y cómo en algún momento, cuando se dio la orden de no atender a heridos, un grupo de individuos nos voluntariamos para atender a las personas heridas en una casa, en una casa dentro de uno de los barrios de Jalteva, que es el barrio donde yo vivía. Y cómo atendíamos a personas con heridas de bala en sus cabezas, en sus pechos, en sus pies, y porque no había la orden de no atender a manifestantes en el hospital de Granada. Y al haber hecho las denuncias con fotos, videos y en mis redes sociales, me puso en la mira de todas estas personas seguidoras del régimen. Y luego pues de estas denuncias, el 15 de julio del 2018 entraron al puesto médico, a esta pequeña clínica improvisada, y, y me secuestraron, me torturaron durante varias horas y después me fueron a tirar a una celda de la policía. Estaba explicando cómo era, de qué tamaño era como una celda de 2x2 y con